Yeah, I ruined my bathroom trying to successfully installing a bidet. Because Darren and Eva. And
I'm aware. I've met him.
They have a bidet. And I was like, I want to have a sophisticated European anus like my friends Darren and Eva. So I have a bidet.
Why don't I have a sophisticated European anus?
I don't know. I've been asking myself that an uncomfortable amount. But I thought, I'll just install this bidet.
I have a blue collar American asshole.
You have
a Japanese
real complicated.
asshole.
It took me a bit because I worked on it for like an hour and a half. I couldn't. It was the hose was screwed on too tight, and I was just wrenching it. And I screamed so much. Wallace hid in the basement, and then I went, "What if I've been turning this the wrong way?" Turns out I was turning it the wrong way. I was tightening it rather than loosening it. That was unnecessary, right? Fixed it, got everything fine. Then I was like, you know what? The bathroom is dirty. I'm going to clean it with Listerine wipes. Well, now that I've cleaned the bathroom with Listerine wipes, might as well throw them away. But you know what? The toilet's right here. I'll just throw away these Listerine wipes in the toilet, which I learned are like cherry bombs for toilets. And for whatever reason, in my apartment.
Listerine wipes? I'm still stuck on Listerine wipes. Like not Windex wipes, but Listerine, like the
wait, no, it wasn't, excuse me, it wasn't Listerine. It was like, I think it starts with an L, but it was some kind of like bleach wipe. It was like a Clorox wipe.
All right.
That's it. That's the thing I'm thinking of. Clorox wipe.
Clorox wipe. Sounds
my floors,
more,
I was not worried about my floors getting gingivitis. That was not a concern that I had.
Good. All right, so then you threw them in your toilet, which is the worst thing. Yes.
My bathtub made like an ungodly Lovecraftian noise as if a demon was in it. And I didn't think much about it, took a shower later, and then came out and somehow an entire bathtub amount of water had come through the entire kitchen and into the basement.
No.
Yep. And that's on me. That's on me. But also turns out it's just really, really bad plumbing. Because I don't want to brag. I've clogged many toilets in my day. And this is the first time that I've like ruined a ceiling.
And this is, I mean, that might have been like Benjamin Franklin's plumbing. Like
yes,
they're
no
one's changed anything in Virginia.
Yeah,
because poor landlords are like, this guy has been here for 2 weeks.
Yeah. He's. I gotta say, my landlord's great. I texted him and was like, "Hey, the water's coming through the ceiling. I need to know where the off switch is." Like 8 seconds later, he's like, "Here's where it is." He calls me and he's like, "I'm coming over." He was there within like 15 minutes. He got his plumber guy there within like 25 minutes. Oscar, also a good dude. Really, everybody associated with the house is really doing well except for me in terms of maintenance operations. But again, I do want to point this out. It broke yesterday and also flooded the ceiling again. So the second time this happened, I did not use Clorox wipes because I have a sophisticated, clean European anus. Why would I bother with Clorox wipes? So it wasn't my fault that time.
You would use Clorox wipes on your butthole?
I feel like Listerine would be better for that.
The point is, the plumber yesterday, the plumber told me this was not your fault. The pipes are occluded. We got to replace the pipe.
Oh, God.
How are you alive? Like there is like a real baby's day out quality to your existence that I just imagine at any given time you're just, like you're walking through your kitchen and like you pick up a jar of bleach and you're like, no, not today. I'm not thirsty right now. Like there's no recognition that it would kill you. You just put it back down because it's before noon.
Have you ever heard of the term righty tighty, lefty loosey?
Okay. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I had just unscrewed something else that, for whatever reason, was flipped around. So, from my perspective, I had untightened a thing by making it go one direction, and then I untightened the other thing going the same direction, but it didn't work because it was like Australian or something. I don't know what happened.
That's not true. That didn't happen. You might think it happened, but it did not happen.
I feel like righty tighty, lefty loosey is kind of universal. I can't think of a scenario where it doesn't
also
work.
A good shorthand for chicks at protests.
Okay. Well played, Justin.
Go away. Fine. I'm still having to train. So Wallace in the last studio I got in Austin, understood when I go into the studio, shut up. I don't think he doesn't fully understand. Like he doesn't, in my mind, the desk and the microphone are a dead giveaway. But from Wallace's perspective, I am yet again looking at a very boring, smell-less glass rectangle that's in a much larger room that has windows that look down on cats. And so I've not figured out how to do this yet. Maybe I'll get a taser or something.
A taser.
I don't know. See how you can apply a few Clorox wipes to him. Maybe he'll figure it out.
Chloroform.
You can get one of those dog fences, just put it inside. So if he tries to come in the studio, it just automatically electrocutes him.
Well, you know what? I want him to come in the studio. Like he sits on that little couch right there. And on the political orphanage, I'm planning to make a Wallace cam so that Wallace, like just every 3 to 4 minutes, you'll just see a quick blip of Wallace. I think it'll be adorable. It's not that I like him being in here. I don't like him barking. That's the problem.
That's fair.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know where we fit in a few things in the opening of this show, but not making the rundown, nor the episode of PX3 that came out this morning was Donald Trump just musing openly that maybe the United States would own Gaza. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
That we take it over.
It's moving so fast that by the time I'm able to grasp this, it's like with the trade war stuff that happened.
Yeah.
I see some of that stuff happening. And then I'm like, due diligence, you don't want to read policy initiatives as only described by critics. So I'll check out what did Donald Trump say. And Donald Trump immediately on Truth Social is like, no tariffs if Canada becomes the 51st state. Literally Donald Trump's floating Canada, you should totally think about joining America. And I'm like, what? Okay, this adds a whole other dimension.
I don't know why the Democrats aren't
this.
for it. That would be a huge lead for them in the Senate. They would own the House for sure. Yeah.
Fun fact, Newfoundland very nearly joined us. They wanted to. Newfoundland was a separate country until 1940, 1950, and they preferred America over Canada, but we didn't want them because it was too far north and too cold, so they went with Canada.
I will say, if Canada became the 51st state, the gerrymandering on that state would be hilarious.
Oh my God.
It would just be like Alberta gets 17 districts, and then there's just one that encompasses both Toronto and Montreal.
Toronto and Vancouver are the same congressional district.
We have no idea.
By water.
Their district looks like eyeglasses, kind of.
It is, yeah. It just goes up through Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Wait, so what's the Gaza thing? Because my mom texted me something about this, and I wasn't.
The correct answer here is we don't know because he doesn't know. In terms of, there's nothing official. There was just kind of musings.
While sitting next to Netanyahu.
Well, standing next to, both.
But in the same room.
He was in the same room with Netanyahu. But also, I don't know if Netanyahu would want this, because even Netanyahu, the way that he was looking, he was it's something that we'll talk about. But yeah, look.
Basically what happened is that Donald Trump said that the U.S. is going to take over Gaza and move the Palestinians out of it. So saying that we're going to find them a piece of land, maybe a couple pieces of land, maybe in Egypt or in Jordan, and we'll make it beautiful.
My plan was move all the Gazans to Baja California and move all the Israelis to Wyoming, and no one gets to live there. So maybe he's finally getting my emails.
And it all becomes a pickleball court.
Maybe he's initiating the Heaton, you guys broke it, no one gets to live there plan.
Look, the modern world of the Middle East, and specifically Israel, Gaza, and the Palestinians, basically stretches back to the late 60s in terms of American foreign policy. There have been many presidents since then. They've all looked at it differently. Some have been good, some have been bad, depending on people's perspectives, but none of them have looked at Gaza and seen a pro shop. He is definitely the first president to be I don't know, live, work corridor, dining, dancing.
So I appreciate out of the box thinking. What I find interesting about the Gaza one is one of the things that I appreciate about Donald Trump, that I kind of agree with Donald Trump on, is the whole maybe we're overcommitted abroad. Maybe America has too many hands and too many pots, and we ought to just come back. Middle East, big headache. Why are we even over there? And I'm I agree. And he's or we annex Gaza. We make the epicenter of Middle Eastern conflict part of the United States commercial empire. Great call.
Look, he thinks it's a good idea until Barron Trump loses the election because of voting irregularities in Gaza. You know, that's.
But Jared Kushner, who's Trump's son-in-law, has some kind of investments going on and has openly talked about how they want to develop Gaza. They love that it's beachfront property, which like it is a valuable piece of land. But I think, to take this serious for a second, this is Donald Trump saying the quiet part out loud. Like the history of this is a land grab. And so he's just saying that we are going to directly participate in that land grab while sitting next to Netanyahu. So I'm worried about it in a way that like, the way that I'm approaching the Trump administration is I'm not following what he says. I'm watching what he does. Right. So when it comes to the tariffs over the last week, that was a lot of Donald Trump says the thing is going to happen and the thing didn't happen. And it's really not even worth our time talking about at this point because it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But with this one, to say this with Netanyahu standing right there, at the very least, it's going to scare the shit out of everyone who is concerned that the plan was for Donald Trump and Netanyahu to take over the West Bank and Gaza. And now he's saying straight up that not only is that going to happen, but the United States is going to participate directly in it. So there are people in this world that are following what Donald Trump says and are concerned about it. And
so the argument, the other side of that argument is that, yes, there are people that are listening to it. And the person that really was directed at that was Mohammed bin Salman and Saudi Arabia, that there is going to be foreign influence in Gaza. Previously, it was the Iranians who funneled money into Gaza. And they don't want that, obviously, to happen again. And so the thought was that Saudi Arabia spends the money and rebuilds Gaza. And that the Saudi Arabia doesn't want to do it. As Jon Stewart said, they spent more money on Phil Mickelson than they have the Gaza Strip over the last 10 years. So to give another side of like, if right now the Arab world is freaking out saying, what the hell, like America's going to move in, like that's a bad idea for everybody, then it puts more pressure on Riyadh to say, all right, whatever, here's a couple $2 billion, rebuild Gaza. And they actually take a leadership position there through a normalization effort. Because that's the other thing is that like, dangling in the middle of this is a normalization pact between Israel and Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia says they will not do that without the recognition of a Palestinian state, which the other side after that is like, okay, put up the money and be responsible for it.
Yeah. And Donald Trump was saying at the same time, there's so much money over there. There's so much money in the Arab world, because they were asking him like, well, if you're taking over Gaza, who's going to pay for it? And he's like, well, I mean, there's enough money over there already. So there's validity to your theory. And that's also why, like, I'm not freaking out at this point because I do know that Donald Trump says things to get reactions, like the way he threatened Canada and Mexico. Like, then he gets these agreements, which they agreed to stuff they had already agreed to before. But like, he at least gets to tell his followers, like, hey, I did a thing. We win. I'm part of the deal.
It also shows that, like, you know, I compared it to if your parents pulled out a loaded gun and said, clean your room. But then you did clean your room. And it's like, it's pretty fucked up parenting, but you did clean your room.
Yeah. So we're still in like, this is a thing Trump said mode, which, like, you know, take a beat. Let's just watch and see what happens. But it wasn't news that I was happy about.
Here's what I'm getting out of this. One more reason. I don't like beaches. You know what? I already think beaches are a desert with a hole at the end. You don't see the shit from forests. Forests are a good biome.
Okay.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Jen Briney.
And from Washington, D.C.,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
And we're not wrong. On this edition of the program, we will be talking about the United States establishing a sovereign wealth fund, speaking of something else that we want to have in common with Saudi Arabia, and Super Bowl ads, along with your emails. We also we're not on the list of topics, but I'm sure people want something from us, is Elon Musk and his gang of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that are currently rampaging through America's financial systems. Any comments on Doge, Jen?
Jen, did you see me on Twitter yesterday?
I think I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I just posted my frustration. I've said it on this show a few times now that, like, Doge isn't a real government department. And there were just so many responses to that being like, yes, it is. It was created by executive order. And it's like, okay, let's take a beat and understand what this is. There was an executive order that created Doge. True. He said it was done by renaming the Digital Services Agency. Now, the Digital Services Agency was created in the wake of healthcare.gov being very difficult to set up during the Obama years. And so they created the digital...
It's a very kind way of saying they fucked up the website.
Yes, they fucked it up big time. And so they created this little agency that was there to like help set up healthcare.gov and like do techie things. But it's an agency. It's not a department. And I think like what depressed me yesterday is that people don't know the difference between an agency and a department. You can't rename an agency.
Find a meme that has an A in it and they will rename Doge. The only reason why it's Doge is so they can do the meme.
Understood. But the reason I think that it matters is that it does matter in governmental structures. So a department could have oversight authorities over other parts of the government, which is what Doge is claiming. And so I'm less concerned with the name. I'm more concerned with the authorities that it is trying to take right now, specifically funding authorities. So like Elon Musk via Doge said that he's going to stop paying federal contractors. And I'm not sure what has happened yet, but he said like, we're done paying some of these contractors. That is not something that this fake department has the ability to do. And so I think that Congress, first of all, would have to create a new department, but also Congress is the one that doles out funding. And so for him to make decisions about what gets funded and what doesn't, it just fundamentally doesn't have that power. It was never given that power by Congress. And so the fact that people are taking Doge seriously is bugging the shit out of me.
Who do you mean people? Do you mean people online or do you mean people in government?
Both. So it's like, and media. So like in Congress, I would like to see our Congress, which has the power of the purse, step up and say, you do not have the powers that you have. I would also like to see people in the media calling Doge out for the fake department that it is, instead of like, they're reporting on what Doge is doing, but not reporting on the reality of these situations being so legally wishy-washy.
What are they doing?
And then when it comes to the public, determining who does and does not get paid. That is not something that they have the authority to do. And then performing oversight of other departments. So it's different. This is supposed to be an advisory committee.
Yes.
And so that's what makes it like not a department. It's basically an advisory committee. Where it crosses the line is in actions. And so forcing these teenagers, whoever the hell they are, forcing the Treasury Department to allow these people right now, they're at the point of having access. We don't know if they're actually cutting off any funding, but the concern is that they're setting that up. And then there's also been announcements that they are cutting off funding. They are cutting off funding to federal contractors. They don't have this authority. Like you can't go to another department and just cancel contracts. Like it's just, they're acting on authorities they do not have. And I am concerned that the media, by just reporting on it and not saying this is not a legitimate department, like they named it a department. That's what people think it is. I think it's a propaganda term in addition to it being just stupid Elon shit, wanting it to be a meme. But at the same time, if you're calling it a government department, it makes it sound like a more official, large, powerful part of our government than it is. It's a deceptive name. And so that's my biggest concern about it. It's a separation of powers thing and a taking power from Congress issue. That's our branch. I'd want our branch to be respected.
I'm 100% with Jen on the branch. Like Congress controls the power of the purse. Congress writes laws. Congress designs the government. The executive branch is so called because it executes the will of Congress. That's the whole idea behind it. And we're getting away from that, right? I agree with you. I don't think Doge, practically speaking, in terms of the powers allocated to it, is an advisory body to the president. So it can only do things the president has an authority to do. It can tell Trump, we recommend that you as the president do so-and-so. It can do that. You can form a blue ribbon committee whenever you want, but it can't do anything that the president can't already do. And the president doesn't have the legal authority to suspend funding for things that Congress has allocated. What the president can do is he can reallocate funding within the executive branch if it hasn't already been stipulated by Congress. If Congress just gives the Pentagon a blank check Yeah, because he's the head of the Pentagon. I mean, he's the head of the military. He could do that, but that typically doesn't happen. The Congress does allocate specific programs all over the place. So I don't disagree with any of that. I will nitpick slightly in that I think it's overstatement to call it a fake thing. I guess I'll department versus agency. I'm not aware. I defer to you on this, Jen. I was not hitherto aware that there was a significant difference between a department and an agency. I thought that was more nomenclature, but there have been important groups in American government that were created by executive order. FEMA was started by Jimmy Carter as an executive order. The EPA was started by Richard Nixon as an executive order. The Peace Corps was started by John F. Kennedy as an executive order. Congress subsequently went, this is a good idea, and then enacted them into law, but they began that way. And I'm not sure that the NSA was ever actually codified. I think that might have been an executive order that we all just go, yep, it's a thing now. So that bit does not bother me as much. It is the assuming the powers of Congress and just kind of writing law with no legal authority. That's the part that concerns me, in which I agree with you, Jen.
Well, and I just want to be clear that like all of those things that you said, those were agencies. So it's like the NSA is a part of the Department of Defense. USAID agency is a part of the State Department. And so that's why I think the name matters so much, and why when you talk about this as if it is a department is something that is created by an act of Congress. A department is something that, Congress gives the department the funding, and then the department does have the ability to allocate and transfer funds around within its agencies. And so that's why I think the name here matters in a messaging type of way.
So
like, I
if they just called it
that it's
the Doge agency, it would be okay.
I think it would be better, because right now, by calling it a department and by people not correcting the record on what powers it does and does not have, people think that it has more powers than it actually does. That's my concern. It's being granted a department status by people that don't know better, that don't really understand that this is supposed to be an advisory committee, and then it's never supposed to be an actual department. So that's why I'm so nitpicky about that name, is that it's making people think, especially the people that want Elon to do the things he's doing, that hate foreign aid. And so they're like, yeah, get rid of USAID. And it's like, yeah, you can't do that. The State Department could probably change the structure.
Which is what's happening, though.
I know, and that's the thing. That's what's happening.
That is what's happening. So it's like they are not doing it. They are suggesting that the State Department do it, and the State Department is. So if it's the State Department doing it, that's one thing. That's where an advisory committee can do these things. It's just going fast.
It's going fast, but also they're in so many different areas. So when Elon Musk says that Doge has canceled federal contracts, that is not, we advised this department to do a thing. That is, Doge is doing the thing. And that's where I think we have to be concerned when it crosses into action.
I'm not familiar with where that was specifically.
Well, go on my Twitter, because it's on there.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm talking about. They are going so fast and furious that we have to make sure that Doge is acting as an advisory committee, as opposed to going through and actually acting. And I think they are acting in certain instances, especially with funding.
I've got some friends in the federal government that are freaking the fuck out right now. And I think I'm freaking out less because I'm not employed by the federal government, and I probably would trim lots of stuff in the federal government. But there's a difference between if I became president and just did whatever the hell I wanted, and went, I think the Office of Innovation, I think that's redundant. I don't think that needs to, we could scrap that, right? But I can't do that by executive action. You don't get to be dictator. You execute the will of Congress, right? So Doge is stepping outside of its actionable remit to basically just declare itself we're going to act as though this is a constitutionally authorizing. Again, I might even agree with some of the stuff they're doing, but in a democracy, it's not just the outcome of what you're going for. Who makes the decisions is important. Rule of law is important, even when you agree with the outcome of it.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Here's the thing, though. It might be wildly popular, because in general, USAID is not something that is particularly popular. It's been bipartisanly criticized. And if that is the thing that people are going to fight on right now, then I think it's going to be a politically losing position. I think that it is looked at as something that does need major reform, and bringing it tighter under the State Department is something that is popular, I think, bipartisanly.
But as Andrew just said, you can agree with every single policy. You can like the politics of it, but have the means towards those ends be wrong, illegal, and possibly unconstitutional. And that's what we have going on right now.
Is that rare in government?
That doesn't make it okay. Like,
I'm not
this
saying
is how
it makes
we
it
get
okay.
here.
I'm not saying it makes it okay, but I do think that that is something that happens more often than not. And if this is a thing that has a popular outcome, then I don't think that people are going to be quite outraged by the process of it, is all I'm saying.
Well, I've seen plenty of outrage, so I don't know. I don't really care about the politics of it. I care about the fact that our branch of government seems to have its power being usurped by an unelected South African billionaire. So I have concerns.
He's in the government. He's a special governmental employee.
Yeah, well, I've never liked the man. I like him even less now. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him, and he's usurping powers he does not have. So I think it's an issue.
Heaton, why aren't like the reasons set really horny for this? It feels like every department that I read about that is involved with Doge are things that I've read probably in Reason itself as being a cancer upon the not only American government but America itself. And I would assume that this would be like Bastille Day for Reason.
Reason is very polyglot in terms of its interpretations of what's going on at any given time. There's lots of different viewpoints there, but my broad assessment is that I find that libertarians that live in DC tend to be less populist, and libertarians that live out of DC tend to be significantly more populist. So like, I'm friends with Tom Woods. Tom Woods is gleeful about what's going on with Doge and USAID. He had a newsletter yesterday. I can't verify any of this. I'm just repeating what I read from Tom's newsletter, that Bill Kristol is freaking out about USAID, and somebody went through and went, like, you're not pointing out that you get a grant of X million dollars as the president of some nonprofit that USAID allocates money to. So Tom's interpretation is this is a deep state fustercluck where there's just lots of money that's being shuffled in a kind of good old boys network isn't the right thing in an establishment like we're all part of a Council Foreign Relations crew and that kind of thing. So they're very happy about it. I think I won't speak for my colleagues at Reason. For me, I care about both. I care about the size and competency of government, and I care about rule of law. And so I am having to adjudicate on my end, what do I want people to do and how do I want them to do it? So if USAID is going to be folded into the State Department, and that is something that is within the purview of the executive branch to do, that probably is a good idea. And I'm confident that there is stuff that ought to be trimmed out of the budget from USAID. There's lots of things that I would cut. I would also want to just go through and assess it based on like what is being impactful and beneficial to the American people. What are things that we can't quantify? And I'm sure that there are things, right? But I also want to make sure that we're doing
8 million
legally.
to Politico, by the way. Look, the We're Not Wrong Patreon. Very simple. We'll take it. We'll take $1 million, man. If you're going to cut that, just peel us off a little bit.
But okay, so like, there's gonna be lots of things, right? But the bit that makes me concerned, Justin, is I don't want to just have rogue government not constrained by law. One of the bigger macro issues for somebody that believes in limited government like myself is the government has to obey the law. That's what restrains the government. So if you start having an executive, you start having groups of people that can kind of just do whatever they want. What if I don't happen to agree with that group a year from now or a month from now, and they've taken all that power? That's a concern.
I guess I think the argument on the other side, and I'm not saying that I am here, but is that that's literally what was happening, and that is what is being corrected. So yes, it is a situation where there is a go fast and break things, but that USAID was something that increasingly, like Marco Rubio, when he was still a senator, before he became Secretary of State, was very critical of USAID because it had continually moved itself outside of the purview. It did not answer directly to the Secretary of State. And that's before you get into some of the like Glenn Beck, Mike Benz version of like, they are essentially just a funding organization for CIA color revolutions and all sorts of other stuff that is totally outside the purview legally of whatever these agencies are. And there's a reason why they are using USAID as a hand puppet for them, because this is illegal. And so it's like,
great. Make that case to me. That's going to resonate with me of, look, there's an illegal government operation going on and we're pruning that. I'm much more open to that than I am with, haha, we've got the power. Fuck you. Like that bit's what, like you understand, like arbitrary concentrations of power are going to alarm me.
Oh, no. Yeah. No, look, I don't know what's happening. I know what the reports are of what's happening. Everything that I've seen, like 404 Media had some of the conversation back and forth about some of the government organizations and Doge getting in control of some of the payment systems at the Department of Treasury. The head of the Department of Treasury defended that today, but whether or not you think that that is good or bad, that is up to you. I know that it is fascinating to see that there is this bright of a light on something that has been, I think, relatively relegated to the fringes of largely either right wing or left wing at a certain point, talking points, including stuff like the color revolution in Ukraine.
Are you talking about USAID?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the State Department, they have the National Endowment for Democracy. And like USAID, one of the reasons it's so effective in funding shady shit is because it really does do good work in the world. So you really do have to like parse it out. Like some of it is giving AIDS medication to people who need AIDS medication. And some of it is funding media to help with an overthrow in another country. Yeah. And it's like, so there's definitely problems there. But again, the ends don't justify the means in a country where you want to have a rule of law. And I think that's where Andrew and I are clearly on the same page on this, where it's like process matters, and blowing it up in the way that Doge is doing. This is not how it's supposed to work in our government.
Yeah. Well, let's get to some other money things. President Donald Trump signed an executive order Monday establishing U.S. sovereign wealth fund for infrastructure development and a potential TikTok acquisition. While funding sources may include tariffs, the initiative's primary goals are infrastructure investment and potential strategic acquisition of the social media video company, which currently is in its 75-day window to divest its Chinese interests. Unlike traditional sovereign wealth funds, which typically rely on budget or on natural resource wealth or fiscal surpluses, the U.S. version would operate despite having existing budget deficits. The fund aims to compete with established funds in China, Norway, and Singapore while reducing dependency on treasury debt. Its stated mission is to promote fiscal sustainability, reduce tax burdens, ensure economic security, and strengthen U.S. global leadership. For comparison, Norway's fund leads globally with a 1.7 trillion amount in assets, followed by China's 1.3 trillion, according to the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute, which I can only imagine their Christmas parties. Holy shit. Like, that's got to be awesome. I swear to God, if I ever go to the Christmas party of the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute and it's a cash bar, I'm going to have some strong words because that is close to a lot of money. These funds invest in various assets, including stocks, bonds, real estate, infrastructure, although critics warn of a potential transparency and government issues. Mr. Andrew Heaton, is this fund a good idea? And should America buy TikTok with it?
No and no. A couple of like prefaces to that. I like Besant, by the way. I think like gay Wall Street guy, that's probably in my neck of the woods. So I like our incoming Secretary of the Treasury that you
could probably talk to him about Marie's crisis.
Absolutely. If I ever meet him, that's going to be my first question is like, hey, I don't really want to talk about T-bonds at the moment. Do you like My Fair Lady? Because I know a place we could go. So I rather like him.
Yeah, and then he'd want to have sex with you because you look so gay.
Unconscionable gay bait. Unconscionable. Like it should be a law. Trump should pass an executive order outlawing your level of gay bait. Anyway.
Yeah, sorry, friends. I'm so straight, I eat my hot dogs from the middle. That's how straight I am. I just happen to look this way. So I like
sound and talk and have interests that overlap with.
Yeah. You know, it's the second they make gay pills, I'm going to fucking suck my way across this country. But at the moment,
Venn diagram of interest in gay lifestyle is almost a complete circle with only one slight sliver.
It's just one dick-shaped sliver.
It's just the cock part that I don't like. Everything else, though. So anyway,
please go ahead.
Love the gays minus the butt stuff, which they're welcome to do. I'm just not into that. Love Besant.
And mouth stuff.
I'm just not into men. I'm just not into men.
Hand stuff, negotiable.
Yeah, negotiable. I like the idea of a sovereign wealth fund. So like a lot of the time when we're having these conversations in political economy, we get into this mindset, and I'm very guilty of this, of like the private sector versus the public sector, the state versus the private sector, right? Like, I think that there's a good argument to be made that we could envision something that's just the commons, the way like a park or a road is. Like, it's not really like, I'll back up. Like they've done this in Norway. I think that they actually have a very good system in Norway. I think that one of the missteps that Thatcher, peace be upon her, made when they were privatizing big chunks of moronic public agencies in Britain is that they just put it back into the tax base. They could have made a sovereign wealth fund, and it would have probably been a very good thing for the British people. So I think there are places that are good ideas for sovereign wealth funds. Why I think it's a bad idea in this instance is two or three things. First, if this were a situation where we were going to have like everybody just pays 1% more in their income taxes this year, and on capital gains, we put it all in a big hat, and that goes into a sovereign wealth fund, and everybody gets a dividend from the sovereign wealth fund every year. I would like that. That would be like, hey, like when America's doing well, everybody gets a little bit of money. It's just a kind of very, very clean redistributive mechanism. I think I would support something like that. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a slush fund that the president gets to play with. That way Congress doesn't actually do shit, and that's bad. I don't want there to be like an autonomous presidential do whatever the fuck you want fund. That like now the president becomes his own kind of unilateral Congress with play money for just whatever projects he wants to do, like infrastructure or buying TikTok. Again, the role of the president is to execute the will of Congress. I don't want to have like weird autonomous competing branches that are not accountable to each other. That's not a good direction for us to go. So it would end up being a slush fund. I think it would dramatically go back and forth from administration to administration on what they're going to buy with it. So Trump would buy TikTok, and then I don't know, like Kamala Harris would come back and we'd buy up. I don't know. It would have a certain whiplash element to it. We'd buy wine. She'd buy a bunch of vineyards and nationalize them. The other thing too is like the amount of political pressure that would be exerted on a sovereign wealth fund in our democracy in particular would be incredible. So a sovereign wealth fund would work pretty well if you had a independent shielded group of people, and it's like, look, this is your whole remit. Try to make this money as big as possible without doing anything unethical against the law, right? But otherwise, just maximize the amount of money, and then we give it to the Norwegians. That's what something to that effect, right? I don't think that would happen. I think that you would see one of two things occur. You would see pressure put on the sovereign wealth fund not to just operate like an index fund, where it's just buy shares in big companies of the United States as a reflection of the overall economy. There would be pressure that's like, well, you got to buy American companies specifically. And actually, we really want to help out businesses in Kentucky. That's one of our focuses right now. So you want to buy up stock in Kentucky companies rather than California companies. Or, we really like now our administration is very pro-union. So only invest in organizations that have deals with unions and protect union pensions. And then it ends up becoming an activist mechanism rather than an investment mechanism, which is the point of it. Alternately, I think just fucking crony capitalism would run amok. I think there's a very good chance if you had one of these sovereign wealth funds that Trump and his lads are running, that it would buy up stock or invest in companies that Trump owns or his friends own. And that kind of thing, I think moving forward would be very, very likely. So you've got an unaccountable presidential slush fund that he can use to play with, that is probably going to be either activist or cronyist, depending on the administration. And I don't think that that's a particularly good way to go. I also don't think we should buy TikTok either. I don't want to have the government sit on the board of a private company. That's now the government's going to like become a shareholder in corporations. We're going to have the president be in effect a member of the board of big media companies. That is a level of government involvement in the private sector and in media in particular I don't want.
Let's put TikTok on the side for now, but just generally, if you can lay out why this would be different than, say, Norway, and let's also leave for aside the fact that they have a budget surplus and we do not. But
that would be a big part of that.
That has never stopped us from gigantic spending.
Right. I'm glad you bring that up, because I do think that's salient, because the situation is sort of like imagine you have an extremely fiscally irresponsible friend that has 7 maxed out credit cards, and he goes, you know what I'm going to do? Day trading. I'm going to get into day trading. I'm going to, rather than having somebody else worry about it, I am going to try to beat the market by having my own investment fund. I'm going to day trade it. It's not a good idea. So I do think that's actually very relevant. Like where a sovereign wealth fund would work
but just in terms of the mechanics of it, yes,
which we don't fully know. To be clear, we don't really know what the mechanics. Probably it would be paid for with tariffs. I went through the memorandum that the president issued, and it said like there's lots of assets that the federal government owns. So money that presumably it's using to fund the government, but is sitting in some account, or things that have been seized, or maybe we would take out loans and use federal land as collateral. There's different funding mechanisms for it. I don't think any of that, however you fund it, Justin, I don't think any of that dissuades from my earlier point that it would just be a big slush fund for the president to play with, does it?
Sure. So you would say that all sovereign wealth funds are slush funds for the chief executive?
No, it would depend on what they're doing with it. So again, I would be fine with having a sovereign wealth fund that's just a UBI mechanism where it's an index fund. We're just going to go. It's just a reflection of the economy. We're not doing activist investment. We're not having it pick and choose which companies we think are good or are pro-union or are owned by our vice president. Any of that bullshit. We're just going to have an index fund, and everybody in America gets a share of the index fund every year, like kind of like they do in Alaska with their special fund. Something like that, I think, would be okay. I think if we'd set something this up like this up years ago in places like Oklahoma, where we went, hey, the state owns the mineral rights. You own the building. Your company, you own the building. The state owns the mineral rights. We're going to use that to put it in an index fund, and that's going to go as a dividend to everybody in the state. There are instances where I think a sovereign wealth fund would be good. Trump's not talking about a UBI mechanism. He's not talking about dividends for Americans. He's talking about a fund that he could use to do what he wants. The president would have their own independent funding mechanism that would be whatever they feel like. No, I think that goes well beyond what I feel comfortable with a sovereign wealth fund.
Jen, all the Bernie people wanted a Scandinavian economy, and now we're trying to do something Norway does, and everyone's mad. What up?
Honestly, Andrew made every single point that I was going to make on this. The only thing I think I'll add is the funding mechanism, because we don't have a budget surplus and we haven't for 20 years. Also, the other countries, like I think Scandinavia, I think they at least partially fund theirs with proceeds from their fossil fuel wealth.
Yeah.
And that's what some other countries do too.
Ditto
And
Alaska.
instead of we don't have ours nationalized. We allow private companies to take our natural resources, sell them, and profit from them all over the world, which is actually kind of relatively new. We've only allowed that for like 10 years. But that is the situation that we're in. And so really the only way I can imagine them funding this is by selling off our government assets, which is in their wheelhouse. I don't see that as impossible. And the way that they were talking about, like, the government has all these assets, like I could see them selling off our public assets in order to fund this thing, which I don't want them to do.
When you say government assets, what do you mean? Like printers?
Federal land, parks. I don't know.
Federal land.
Federal land. Like, I don't know, like whatever our assets are, taking our royalties from our fossil fuels. We don't get a ton, but like we do get some of them. Like, I literally don't know. But I also know that the main source of funding for our government is our taxes. And I don't want my taxes going into a fund that then Trump and his friends can use to bet on stuff in the stock market or to prop up stocks to help their donors, like, oh, you know what you should invest in? This company called SpaceX. Like, that's the type of corruption that's
not available for public investment.
Okay, fine. I don't give a shit, but you get the point.
I do.
You get the point. The point is, this is an opportunity for...
It'd be a good investment, though. I'm sorry.
It would be a good investment, but this is precisely why, because we have these people that are well connected in this particular administration that wants to do this. And this is a really good way to get the people at the top even more money, because this would be taking pretty much our assets or our tax money, funneling it into the stock market, raising the stock price and therefore dividends of the people that are in the shareholder class, but mainly the people that are connected to Trump. I just see it as another grift from a professional grifter. I don't trust these people enough to trust them to do what I think Andrew said would be the only way I'd support this, which is if you're betting on the entire American economy, you're putting this in something like the S&P 500 so that the whole economy increases and you get money. Like if that was the proposal, I might be open to it. That doesn't
Maybe
seem
they
to
should
be
do
what
that
this
with
is.
Social Security.
What?
Like putting it in like an index fund so it's more solvent.
I mean, that sounds like 401ks. And so when the economy goes down, so does everybody's retirement. Like, do we have to have...
Where were you for George W. Bush in 2002?
I was
because that was
18
literally
years
his
old
plan,
and
and he got blown out of the water.
I would be
But
happy
yeah,
to
does
privatize my
everything-
own Social Security. I would love to just have a 401k and have it go into my 401k. That's
See,
me.
I don't.
would be
I
happy
like
to do
the
that.
fact that we have some kind of public thing there. Like, not everything needs to be connected to the damn stock market. And like, this is just another way of funneling our tax money into private, mainly
All
rich
right, so
people
let me
pockets.
ask, let me
I don't
ask
like
both
it.
of you guys. Let's imagine that this is not Donald Trump. Let's imagine that this is in either of your heads. Doesn't even need to be the same person.
Yang.
It is the
Kind of sounds like something Yang might do.
Yeah, it is the idealized version of a leader, and you have exactly who you want in Congress. You find them to be wise and sage. Their thoughts are not short term; they are long term. They have the best for America at heart. Is there a world in which a sovereign wealth fund is a net positive for America?
If it
There
is
is a
not
world,
connected
Justin,
to an
where-
index fund, the way Andrew described, the answer for me, I don't care who it is no. Because there's going to be a change in administrations. Like, I just don't trust. I don't trust the ability to bet on different companies with my money. So, like, no, I'm a hard no on this unless it's connected to an index fund. No.
I have two provisions, Justin, that you can meet, and then I will endorse this, and in fact would like it. Right, the two provisions are: it needs to be an index fund or something very similar to it, where you're taking a reflection of the economy as a whole, and two, it needs to be for a specific point that you can tell us, the citizens and the taxpayers. I would have
like
it just
where
be
the proceeds are going. Like you would need to know. Okay.
Like I would run something like they do in Alaska with the permanent permanent select fund, where it's like, look, we're going to have it. We have the Yay America Fund. It's a reflection of our economy, and everybody, qua American, gets a dividend from that every year, and we're going to try to manage it in such a way that it grows all the time, but you get some money from it all the time. And it's just a way to make sure that when the American economy is doing well, everybody gets a little bit of it. I like that idea, right? I as the tiny government pro stock market guy, I want there to be some mechanism that is letting people get traction under their feet, particularly if they're at the bottom. I think that kind of thing would be a more fair way of doing it and a much more clean, less bureaucratic mechanism than having lots of alphabet soup welfare agencies, right? So if you have it where it's an index fund and it's just a clean redistribution, or even you can maybe even talk me into it, Justin, if you had a specific ongoing task. There are sovereign wealth funds in the United States. They're typically done at the state level. The great state of Texas, which you're both in. I don't think they had it anymore for a very long time. They had a sovereign wealth fund for education, where the education funding in Texas was its own separate mechanism that was a sovereign wealth fund. If you have something like that, where it's like this exists in perpetuity to fund this specific thing, I think you could talk me into that. I would prefer it be like a UBI mechanism, but maybe it could be something else. What I don't want to do, Justin, is have either a potential activist or cronyist mechanism that's managing the investment, and B, I don't want it to just be a big play money fund for whoever the president is. Even if I like the president right now, it's Jared Polis and Andrew Yang with their special advisor Mitch Daniels. Great, best case scenario for Heaton. That's going to last like 4 years, maybe 8 years. They're just going to swap out every 3 days. But like at some point it's going to go over. I don't like the government having a group of experts go, hey, trust us, we're just going to use money for good things. Don't worry about it. We promise it'll be a good thing. No, either give it to the taxpayers or let the taxpayers vote on it.
No, I think it's fair. I think that I think it's an interesting idea. The one thing that I found fascinating reading more about it was that I initially came into this conversation just assuming this was a thing that the Saudis did, because the Saudis wanted to.
Well, they do. We know about it from the Gulf.
Well, and movies and tech, that was when Mohammed bin Salman was first kind of introducing himself to America. He was like the tech sheik, and he would he had these like glowing Time magazine articles written about like he takes off his princely clothes and puts on a suit and goes and buys Uber like shares or whatever. So I just assumed that it was a way that they were trying to diversify their wealth away from petrodollars.
Which they are.
Reading more about it, it's like this is more of a widespread idea than I initially thought. And I guess if you're going to sell me on it, part of it would be like, yes, it's gambling, but it's gambling. There's an old David Cross joke where he says, because the Pope's infallible, he should just go to Vegas and put the entire papal see on red, and then it rolls in on black. And he's like, no, it's not. Moving on to the Bellagio. Like, he's infallible. He can't be wrong. There is an element of that with an American sovereign wealth fund where, like, if a company that gets gigantic Saudi money now all of a sudden is more likely to succeed in public investment because it knows that there is a strong spine to it, America backing it would be probably an order of magnitude more than that. So it's like, yes, you are gambling, but you're gambling on a game where you can kind of rig it yourself. The argument against it is that you are creating a funhouse mirror version of the economy where you might be betting on things that are bad and are bad for the economy, and that it does hamstring.
And it's easier. That would be easier in America's case. It would be easier to have political pressure and an index fund coincide. But like, look at France, for example, something that Macron has started to, I think he's taken steps this direction. He's certainly made rhetorical steps, is to say things like, why are our retirement funds invested in American companies? The answer to that is because if you have a retirement fund like a 401k, your goal is to maximize the money that you're giving to your retirees. Mm-hmm. That's your goal, right? But as a politician, I go, well, hang on a minute. I don't really care that you're investing money, you're getting money for your retirees. I want you to not invest in American companies and maximize your profit. I want you to invest in French companies to keep that money in France, even if it means that the fund does worse. So that's the kind of political pressure that would exist with the sovereign wealth fund. Less in America because our economy kicks ass compared to every other, almost every other economy. So like, we're not going to like go, hey, it wouldn't be a big deal if we said you can't invest in France or something. But you're gonna have those.
What's
kind
the
of
deal
things.
with that haunted museum?
Yeah, you're gonna have some combination. Unless we set it up real squeaky clean, there's always going to be the pressure to have either activist investing where we don't pay attention to the fund doing well. We pay attention to, is the fund buying things with unions? Is the fund buying things that are environmentally clean? Is it doing things that are ethical but unprofitable? Or alternately, does my buddy own the company? And just go into flat out cronyism. Those are always going to be pressures.
Yeah, I guess probably the most sympathetic side of it. This kind of gets into my pro government spending side, my stadium spending argument, that it's like, okay, well, it's not like we don't exist in a world of crony government capitalism now. Like, it happens now.
That's
we
true.
bail out companies. We throw gigantic money at failing entities that are creating a funhouse mirror for economy and don't make it better.
Let Americans get a cut. Is that okay? Interesting.
I mean, if I'll put it this way, TikTok, for example. So America is going to have to play a role in TikTok getting sold from China. Like, because we saw what happened before where there was no governmental pressure. China was like, look, we're going to stand in the way of any kind of TikTok sale. So no matter what, there's going to have to be some kind of State Department conversation that happens between the United States and China for that company to be sold, or it gets shut down. So if that's the case, either we can just shut it down, at which point it is what it is. There are people in America who are desperate to spend, I think, upwards of $1 trillion to buy it, conglomerations that want to buy it for a ridiculous sum of money. If the United States were to facilitate that for a part of that sale, is that good or bad for the American people? Like, I don't know. Like, there is, I think the way that Trump looks at it is all he sees is that there is no government, there is no private, there is just money moving from here to there. And why should we not participate if we are going to be, facilitating this no matter what? I can
kind of see that gives me some cognitive dissonance there. So like with our eternal sparring on stadium subsidies, if a city's going to throw down $1 billion to build a stadium, I would want them to have equity in that stadium. Like I'd like them to own the stadium and lease it out, or own stock in the baseball company or something, right? Like that as a taxpayer, if we're just going to give you the fucking money, I want to get some control back. Once we get to the federal, I don't know whether this is a contradiction in my mind or a scaling thing. When we get to the federal level, I do not want the federal government sitting on the board of directors of companies, which, by the way, is a very Chinese way of doing things. China goes, we want the benefit of the market, but we're all fucking control freaks in the Politburo. And so what we're going to do is just, if you have a big company, the Politburo has to have 51% of the stock, so that at any given time we can just completely reorient what your company's doing. I don't like that. For all the reasons I mentioned about like activism and cronyism.
Yeah, that is definitely the more realistic way of looking at this. The best way of looking at this is, hey, if Marco Rubio helps the sale of TikTok to somebody for $1.5 trillion, then everybody pays a quarter of their taxes less than they would have otherwise. Like, now I don't think that's going to be the case, but that is, I believe, how they're going to try and sell it.
I don't believe them. So there you go.
Yeah. No. That's it. That government skepticism. You love to see it.
I mean, twice in the show, Justin, you basically made the case of like, yeah, the government's fucked up, so lean in. Like, I don't really buy into that. Like, I still think that we need to strive to be better because we keep hitting new lows. I'd like to stop doing that. And I feel like creating a slush fund for Trump and his friends, that's another new low that I'd like to not experience. So, I
mean, we're here, like it's happening. So it's like, I don't have any control over whether or not it's happening.
If you read the executive order, it didn't actually create anything. It said that it wanted the Treasury Department and someone else to take 90 days and like study what it would look like, how they would do it. So we don't have the details. We don't know if it's actually happening right now. It's in the
It's also it's never clear to me when this is an actual Trump plan versus some weird feint. It's entirely possible that the reason that Trump has directed the Treasury Department to do that and make us talking heads discuss it breathlessly, which I'm happy to do, is because there's like some fucking venture capitalist firm that pissed him off and he wants them to get scared that he's about to put money into something else, or that like this has to do with TikTok, that like he's trying to scare the TikTok people. And like it just ends up being like a, hey, look, we got this weird ass negotiation thing going on. Like entirely
there is a weird.
There's a connection with TikTok that I
find
weird.
There's 100% a connection with TikTok. And that apparently was also part of the 10% tariffs that China, I saw it reported in Politico. I don't know if it was reported somewhere else before that China was saying, hey, as a way to get out of the 10% tariffs, number one, they'd actually make good on the deal that they made during Trump's first term in terms of buying certain levels of stuff from American companies. And then number two, they would say they would get out of the way of a TikTok acquisition. So whether or not this is, I think it's very much in Trump's worldview to say, if TikTok is going to sell for $1.2 trillion, then America should make money on it. Like that is something that I do believe is very much in his, like the way that he thinks about things, which again is very much an erasure of public and private. He looks at it like the government should be run more like a private entity, and that if he were facilitating a gigantic deal in New York, he would not be spending the time doing it unless he was able to wet his beak, and that America should be able to do that. That being said, who knows? We are all living in a world where you never really know what's going on.
By the way, I checked last night and TikTok is still not in the App Store. Apple's just like, nope. There's
Apple
legal liability against us. We're not doing this. So if you don't already have TikTok on your phone, like you can't get it.
You're not downloading it.
Yeah. It doesn't exist, which means they're probably not updating it because in that law, they weren't allowed to update it either. So as long as like your current version is working.
Hack TikTok now.
Like
they
seriously.
They can't patch.
Yeah, they can't patch
Shields
anything.
Shields are down. Execute the 0 days.
I recommend taking that shit off your phone, but that's just me.
Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong is where you need to go if you want to get a bonus episode of this program. Patreon.com/We're Not Wrong. This week on our bonus episodes, we're going to be talking about sex clubs. There's a sex club boom in America, according to an Atlantic article. And we're going to talk about it. And then I'm going to make a totally separate episode via AI that Jen is going to convince her father is the real bonus episode. Patreon.com/we're not wrong. Apologies to Jen's dad.
There is a lot of nudity in the Patreon episodes. Like Justin likes to get freaky back there.
I mean, look, you got people are going to jump over the paywall one way or another, and
it's not going to be that
bits are a good way to do it.
Joe and Jen don't even do that anymore. It's been a couple of years, so it's not going to be as salacious as you think. I, on the other hand, am pogo sticking around the finite district
clubs.
of New York. Yeah.
The big game is this Sunday when the Philadelphia Eagles meet the Kansas City Chiefs in New Orleans for the NFL championship. The Chiefs will look to do something never done in NFL history, which is to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. But the game is rife with off-the-field gossip as well. Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce will have his girlfriend Taylor Swift in the stands. President Donald Trump will be in attendance, and Kendrick Lamar will perform at halftime and call his nemesis Drake a pedophile in front of what is expected to be the largest television audience of the year. But what many enjoy the most of this American cultural treasure are the commercials, premium spots that will cost companies $7 to $8 million per 30-second ad. Jen, do Super Bowl ads matter in the way that they once did?
I mean, I think absolutely they do. This is still the only event that I can think of that people will watch for the commercials. That's still a thing that happens. Now, I think it's to be gendered about it. I think it's a lot of women that do it.
Trad viewership.
Sexist.
But it's true.
Internalized misogyny.
Ladies be watching.
I think Bill Burr said it, but it's so accurate that he doesn't like to watch the Super Bowl at Super Bowl parties because he wants to watch the game. And then you go to these Super Bowl parties, you have these women that like have no idea what's going on in the game, and like they just want the commercials, and it annoys the shit out of him. And like, as a woman who watches football, it kind of bugs me too, where it's like, stop talking to me during the fucking game. Like that's what commercials are for.
Me as an ersatz gay, I completely relate to that. Because I'll go to a football game and I'm like, what's happening now? No, is a win back still a thing? Like I'm asking stupid bullshit questions like that. And I'm like, oh, a Pringles commercial. Maybe this will be funny.
Exactly. Yeah. You're like, shut up. I think that's Rob Lowe.
Yeah. People not only watch these commercials, they judge them. They talk about them after. They try and remember them so they can talk about them the next day. Like
it's just been a while since we've had
a good commercial.
A good one.
I know.
And I think part of it is that they got really, really, really celebrity obsessed, and they got really nostalgia obsessed.
They used to have funny commercials. Like I like them when they're funny, and would make buying decisions. I want the world to be funnier. Would actually buy shit if I'm making a decision between a Toyota and a Ford, and Toyota's got the trunk. You remember Trunk Monkey? Trunk Monkey was good. Those were funny commercials. Trunk Monkey was great. It's been like 30 years, but Outpost.com had really funny commercials. There were really funny commercials, and like I watched all the things I watched half the things you said, Justin, and then I just got depressed because they were all. It was a series of celebrities being real cool with real cool like rap dick swinging music, and I was like, this doesn't make me feel like, just fucking tell a joke. God damn it. The only bit I laughed at was in the Pringles bit. There was one where Mr. Potato Head's mustache fell off. That caught me off guard. I laughed. I liked that one. Pringles. I'm gonna buy some Pringles. Everybody else, fuck you. I'm not buying a Toyota.
But then like Super Bowl commercials have also made things celebrities, like, and I know these aren't real beings, but like the Budweiser frogs.
Yeah. Well, that was when
amazing.
That was when beer commercials were their own version of art. It was this kind of avant-garde weird art.
like somehow the Clydesdales would like make you cry, where you're like, why? How am I this emotionally invested in horses hauling beer?
Yeah. And when I saw the Clydesdales, I was thinking back to those Super Bowl ads. Like they've changed our culture. But I do feel like that was more in the past because of the quality of the commercials. But we're all still watching the commercials to see, like, is there going to be the next iconic commercial this year, maybe? Based on the previews that you guys watched that I didn't bother. It doesn't sound like it's going to.
Jen likes to stay pure. Jen likes she likes to make sure that she watches the Super Bowl commercials for the first time at the Super Bowl.
No, at the Super Bowl, the commercials is when I pee. It's when I get a drink. It's when I get a snack, because I am not one of those people. But I also know that there are so many people that only tune into this one game, and it's not for the game. I think it's, and I cannot, like, can you think of any other time that people tune into live TV to watch the commercials?
No.
Exactly. So of course
No.
they're relevant. This is the only time the commercials are really relevant. For the most part, we're all trying to get rid of the commercials, whether that's paying to never see them or fast forwarding, like recording things and fast forwarding them, like football games, which I do, which Justin doesn't because
That's
he's
psychotic.
dumb.
You're a sociopath.
But yeah, we do commercial avoidance except for this 1 3-hour period.
If they would, maybe there's a market opportunity here, because I think what happens with commercials is, I think commercials, they figured out a long time ago, the goal's not to entertain you. The goal is to just brainworm into your mind, like our current Secretary of Health, like just a brainworm drilling into your skull, right? So the idea is, like, if I've got something that is irritating but hard to forget, that's a win. If I could do like a catchy jingle that pisses you off, but you think about it, that's a win, right? So that's how I think how advertising works. If they were to come up with some other stream where they're like, click this button and there'll be funny advertisements, I'll be like, I'll watch your funny advertisement if it's actually funny. But it's just like Vin Diesel in a car and they're playing gangster rap. I'm like, I don't care.
Even weird is good. Like, remember the Quiznos commercials with those weird little gerbil things with the wonky eyes, and they're like, "We have a pepper bar." Like, I loved those commercials. They were so stupid, but they made me laugh.
Well,
I think
see,
you're right.
Right now we're in. I think that commercials kind of got ruined with the Old Spice guy. Remember the first
Terry Withers?
No. Before it was concordant with that, but it was like the guy's like, I'm for Old Spice. It ended with I'm on a horse, but it was like that kind of single shot thing. But it was surreal. It was funny. It was clever. But that meant that everybody had to do a clever, surreal ad because that was now the new trend. And all the companies that were like, oh, make us an Old Spice ad, which means that now you're just going to get like downstream of that. No matter, that is difficult comedy to do. It's more difficult comedy to execute. And whenever that becomes popular, what happens is terrible for culture because you just have a bunch of people failing to do it.
Well, but the other thing too is you can't, there's a reason that like really smart comedies don't always pop. Like so I think I've mentioned this on the show. Forgive me if I am backtracking on stuff, but I briefly and hilariously tried to pitch a sitcom to the Weather Channel. Jen, shut up. I understand that the Weather Channel doesn't have sitcoms. Quiet, Jen. But I worked on this. I got recruited by a producer in New York back in the day, and he's like, "You're very funny." Yes, I am. Thanks. And we're trying to pitch a sitcom to the Weather Channel, and I was like, "The Weather Channel doesn't do sitcoms," and he's like, "That's why we'll be able to do it." And I went, "Okay, I'm willing to work on this just so I can learn how to do a sitcom, how I can write a pilot." So it was an exercise for me, and I worked with a guy from CBS who just like giant light bulb moment. He went, the deal is, up until recently, there were 3 to 4 networks in the whole country that everybody watched. And so we had to design all of our programming around being not offensive or tepid or too smart. Like the goal was, if we could just get you to watch CBS for one show, we just want the other shows to sorry, I got a new camera. It's zooming in dramatically at random times.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah. Wah! We don't want it to be too smart to where people turn it off. So we want it to be entertaining enough that you stick around, but we kind of want it to be bland because we don't want it to alienate anybody. So we're intentionally not making real smart comedies because, like, if we're making comedies for the 10% of the smartest people in the country, that's only 10% of the people in the country. We have to make something that applies very broadly, right? And I think commercials probably operate the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's obviously you want to get out there. I guess we lost earnestness in commercials, and now we're at the end. That Old Spice wave kind of died a few years ago, and now it is in the nostalgia fucking celebrity cameo thing where now it's like, oh, you just have. I think you actually put a fine point on it. It's not celebrities being self-deprecating. it's celebrities being super cool and relatable. And it's like, who wants to see a super cool and relatable celebrity?
It's
like,
so ick.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've just been like, I feel like we're at this like world of diminishing returns when it comes to Super Bowl commercials, where everybody still talks about them, like, oh, the commercials, watch it for the commercials, and then every year they happen and no one remembers or talks about any of them in a way that we used to.
Bad.
Because they stink.
Yeah, but people are still watching them.
They are still watching.
They want to talk about them. Are you guys watching? I mean, I know you're watching the game. Justin and I are obviously watching the game. Andrew, are you watching the game?
Who you got?
You know what?
Eaton's Pick'ems. Here we go.
I'm going to my friend John's house to watch the Super Bowl, which is this Sunday. I checked. And as like last time, I am very worried that if the Chiefs lose, that Taylor Swift will fuck their quarterback. And I'm rooting for her and Kelsey. So I got to root for the Chiefs. Otherwise, maybe she'll dump them and screw the one of the Eagles, like the mascot or something.
Wow, that's a theory.
That is a turn. That is a turn.
I wasn't expecting that.
But yeah, the rumor, it is bettable whether or not Travis Kelce will propose to Taylor Swift after the game.
Oh, I would love that so much. This is where I would be a total chick. I would love it so much.
If they lost and she said no because she was disgusted with him as a loser.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Is like
it's even higher stakes than fucking the mascot. You can get over that.
This gets into my degenerate gambling mind, but it's like actually, if you really think the Chiefs are going to win, you can get way higher odds because there's no way that he's proposing to her if he loses. He would have to win.
Yeah.
So it's like if you really believe the Chiefs are going to win and you want better odds, then
what if she proposes to him after he's lost because he's emotionally vulnerable, and that's like a power move?
You can get him.
I think she's got
trap him.
I think she's got him. That's not really the question.
But
that would like all of the chicks that are going to tune into this for the commercials and the Taylor Swift of it all. If they were to propose on the field after the game, I just think all of us are going to. There'll be a lot of football.
We won't have to talk about sovereign wealth funds for a week
on Sunday night.
No, that'll be it. Well, this will be the next 3 weeks of the show. It's just whether or not, you know, when the wedding is going to be.
Oh, America would love it so much.
Because Kelsey, he's at retirement, the retirement moment too.
If they get the
pretty fucking
3-peat,
slow.
maybe. I know he has looked slow this year, but he's such a good blocker. He's so like big. So I don't know. I don't think he's washed up yet, but if he gets the 3-peat,
then what else are you going to do?
Try and get the 4. Like, I don't know. I feel like I don't think that he's old or slow enough to drop out now. Like, I think they would want to see how many they can get in a row, like truly set the record. Why get 3 and stop now?
Well, they would set the record.
I know, but like you can set the, like right now they have 3. If they win another one next year, that's 4. Like I personally would want to push it until like my team doesn't win the Super Bowl and then be like, okay, that's the record. I helped set it. Like now I'm got, but they don't know if it stops at 3. So I would be very shocked if he retires if they win. I'd be less shocked if they lose. And I'm wondering about his brother. So Jason Kelce, if you don't know this, was on the Eagles and he retired. And
yes,
now they're back in the Super Bowl.
They were brothers. Very proud mother, as I recall. She was there. That was the whole thing. Yeah.
The Kelce Bowl.
They were a great little family. But I
we
am
were
wondering
doing the show when that was happening.
What?
I think it might have been early on in this show that the Kelce, the mother Kelce Super Bowl happened.
I think it was only 2 years ago.
Yeah. So I think we were doing it. Look at that. We got a history now.
It just makes me wonder, though, is Jason regretting retiring since his team is back in the big game?
I think that
I would regret it.
I think the checks he's cashed for endorsement and media shit where he doesn't have to work out.
I know. Like one of your drinking games for this Super Bowl should be how many commercials have Jason Kelce in it, because I bet it's quite a bit.
Yeah. They love brothers. The NFL loves brothers.
Well, especially brothers that have wildly successful podcasts.
Peyton and Eli, the Kelce brothers, they have JJ and TJ Watt are in like Dick's ads and stuff. Like if you're a brother tandem in the NFL, boy, they love you.
The only one who didn't get that was the other Gronkowski. Like there was Gronk and then there was just the other one.
That sounds like a great podcast called The Other Gronkowski.
The Other Gronkowski.
Maybe check that out.
We're not wrongpod at gmail.com. We're not wrongpod at gmail.com. Well, I think the Eagles are favored, right? Take the Chiefs in the points.
The Eagles are favored?
I believe so.
Huh. That's surprising.
I don't like this president writes, everything is happening too fast. First, Medicare is unfunded, then a plane explodes, and now he's a libertarian. Then he's bombing Somalia. And now we're in a trade war with Mexico and Canada. Now the trade war with Mexico is over. Like, I think that all happened this weekend. Are the next 4 years going to be like this?
Did he bomb Somalia?
Did you not say this is one of the greatest presidential missives of all time? He killed, I think it was an ISIS person, but they bombed a cave in Somalia. Then he posted the video of it on social media and then ended his announcement of it with, in all caps, if you come after America, all caps, we will find you and we will kill you.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's some nutty shit.
Hey, listener, here's how this is going to work. Yes, it's going to be this way. For the many, many problems that I have with Donald Trump, I will give him this. He is a media genius. He is a savant when it comes to media manipulation. He is brilliant at making everyone in the country think about him on a daily basis. And I do not think that the media has ever learned this. I don't think they've learned their lesson. I think they will be led around the nose like one of those pigs with a ring in its mouth. The only difference is going to be if we all get tired. It's just a question of manipulation or exhaustion. Those are your options with the Donald Trump media cycle. So buckle up and hydrate.
I also, I've said this before, but this is already helping me with this. Learn to sort the difference between what Trump says and what Trump does. So even on this list, first, Medicare is unfunded. No, it's not.
It wasn't.
You did apparently bomb Somalia, but the trade war with Mexico and Canada never actually happened. So it's we can't really affect these things aside from, make your calls to your members of Congress if you're concerned about something, because it did. I do know that the telephone system at the Capitol is getting so many calls that it's having problems handling them all. So I do think it helps to contact Congress. But once you've done that, go on with your day. There's a difference between, I don't know who said this, but I find it really helpful between your circle of concern and your circle of influence. And you need to know the difference. So it's you can be concerned about things, but you can't be concerned about absolutely everything. And you have to know the difference between what you're concerned about and what you can actually affect. And if it's something that you can't actually affect, it is okay to just decide, I'm not going to invest my emotions in this. I can't affect this. I can't influence this. And therefore, I'm going to walk away from paying attention to it. You're allowed to do that.
I would also say, if you have no connection to something and now you are very fucking mad about it, try to give it at least a day. Try to give it at least a week. Try to get a little bit of a distance from it and then revisit what you were very, very mad about at a certain point. Because what I think that can often reveal is either A, you're probably running a little too hot just in general because something that you had never heard of became the most important thing on the planet to you immediately. And number two, you might be being led around by the nose by either, in this case, Donald Trump, or people that are invested in their own careers by way of opposition to Donald Trump. It's good, especially when things are moving this fast, to just treat yourself to the ability to research these things. Especially if you have never heard of any of this shit before. If you had no idea what USAID was, and now you're screaming and yelling that USAID is the most important thing in the world that needs to be defended with your life, take 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's not going to change for you to take 24 hours.
It's not going to change. If you find yourself, your cycle of enragement, you're mad about every single thing that you're concerned about, I don't think that that's healthy for you or helpful. What you can do is pick the thing that either does affect you the most or upsets you the most and actually get involved in that one thing, because we can't all be involved in every single thing. That's not possible, but do one thing that helps. So it's one of the ways that I feel good about this is I'm doing Congressional Dish. That actually makes me feel good because I'm spending my time doing something in my way that helps. I'm not going to go and protest at the border. There's things I care about, but I just know that I can control my one thing, I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. So it's like, if your thing is the border, maybe find a nonprofit that is working on that, or, you know, volunteer for certain organizations, but like pick a thing. Like I said, like you have a circle of influence, figure out what that is, spend a little bit of time. And if we were all doing that, things will get better. But just like know your limits and give yourself permission to check out, because there's just going to be some things that happen in the next 4 years that we have no control over, good or bad, likely some of it very bad. You don't have to watch every second.
I will make this promise to you, dear listener or viewer. We had more than 3 topics that we could do on the show this week that were Trump centric.
Yeah.
We did 2 of them as mini topics up top during the intro stuff, where we could just kind of blast off whatever thoughts we had, but we weren't really expected to do a ton of research on it. We didn't want to have a segment that lasted 30 to 40 minutes. I am promising you, as the producer of this show, that one Trump topic is the limit. Everything else, we're going to do Super Bowl commercials. We're going to do sex clubs. We're going to do things that are not that, because there is a wider world out there. And I know personally, in my sphere of political or just podcast influence, I'm already seeing some of my favorite shows revert back to this 2017 version, where now it's let's run around like our hair is on fire based on everything that happens. I don't like it. I assume you don't like it either. And so that will be how we do things here.
Don't let it derail your life. Just as a little sneak preview of the Patreon topic, I'm in a prominent sex club in New York, and one of my friends the other day was so worked up about what was going on with USID that he couldn't perform. And I said, Jake Tapper, you love Eiffel Towers. What are we even doing here? Can we just focus on the task at hand? Don't let Trump derail this for you or Debbie. And I say that to you.
Longtime Canadian listener writes, I'm canceling my upcoming U.S. vacation in response to the tariffs leveled against my country. I'm also looking at options for limiting purchases supporting American companies. Netflix, YouTube, Facebook, McDonald's are all on my boycott list. I think for me, that means that even supporting American podcasts by downloading and telling my friends to listen is too much. That's it for me. Good luck with your country. I hope we don't go to war, but I wouldn't bet against it. That happened before. I did email this person, and I asked whether or not the boycott has been paused as the tariffs were paused. He was still very, very upset. So
I'd like to field this one.
That is a perspective.
Canadian listener. Don't respond to shit the president's doing by going low. That's going low. And here's what I mean by this. Let's say some crime is committed by a black man. Would your response be to just not buy shit from black people anymore because it's a group you don't like? Of course not. That would be racist and it would be stupid. Doing that with a whole country of people is the same thing. It's just stupidity along nationalist lines. I know that you're hurt. I get it. I think trade wars are stupid, but be your better self. Don't be ethically puerile. If you don't like this show, don't listen to this show, but don't try to pick a fight with a huge group of people that are a assorted group of individuals with complex opinions. You wouldn't do that with a race, I don't think. Don't do it with a country.
I also think that, I don't know, by saying that you're not going to support American podcasts, especially people that are trying really hard to inform Americans, and like you're concerned about our relationship with your country, like I don't think that boycotting us is helping your cause any. Like, don't you want to support people fighting against this type of stuff in our government, people fighting for our government to behave better? Like, why would you boycott us? I don't know. I don't see the point of it. I just think it's kind of mean.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, like, if you want to boycott us, fine. But it's the writing the email to be like, so fuck you guys. Like, that's the part where it's like, why you got to be mean like that?
But that's the other side of it. And I assume that this emailer is not listening to it because he's boycotted the show. But in general,
they're the people that do that.
They always listen when they do this.
In general, let me finish my sentence because I don't want to make this personal to the emailer. In general, people who loudly say they're about to leave the bar because they hate this bar are always the last people to leave. That is just the law of the land. Gooning too close to the sun writes, I was the listener pushing for Heaton to go on Destiny's show. Destiny's co-host was looking for sane conservatives to bring on their podcast Bridges, and I jumped at the chance to link Heaton and was happy to see that he responded on Twitter. I'm super disappointed that Destiny is so shit at his personal life that he's getting in the way of his own rising trajectory in political media. He's unique because even though he's a staunch supporter of the Democratic Party, his actual political views are way closer of what we know Heaton to support than a standard Democrat. He arrives at his position through hours of personal research that he does on stream, and you can see him learn and take notes in real time. To see Heaton and Destiny circle jerk about how zoning is the bane of our nation would have been incredible to see. Heaton and Destiny share 99% of their political views, but it's fascinating that Destiny ends up as a staunch Democrat and Heaton does videos for Reason.
Hey, listener, thank you for trying to facilitate that. I genuinely appreciate that. I would have loved to have gone on there for all the reasons that you bring up. I literally wrote a book called Tribalism is Dumb, and I'm trying to get that gospel out. I want to make the world less partisan and less reflexive and stupid. I think that there are lots of things that we surprisingly agree on, regardless of where we are. Like there's lots of places for overlap. And if there's not overlap, wouldn't it be great to have a good conversation about that? I think we do that here on the program a lot, where we love and respect each other and have different viewpoints. So I really appreciate you trying to make that happen. Feel free to do it again, because I would, on a selfish level, love to have more exposure. And we'll see if we can't make it happen with Destiny at some point in the future. I'd still like to go on his show.
Look at that. Alf is streaming, right? Alf streams on every single ad-supported streamer, including Pluto, Tubi, Peacock, etc. It's a slut of an archived television series. It's also one of the most watched shows on those platforms. Big Alf love out there.
I do not understand how the algorithms are not feeding me Alf. Because I have Peacock right now. They have not fed me Alf. I did not know it was on there.
Get on it.
Well, I'm canceling Peacock because their number of ads that they put in there is just offensive, and I can't. So I only have it till Friday. But
Alf
yay,
it up.
Alf!
Alf it up before you're done. On the topic of immigration, hypocrisy much, writes Justin. Migrants are taking advantage of loopholes at the border. That's not okay. Also, Justin, can't blame Trump for taking advantage of the loopholes that he finds. I get that you want to have left, Jen, center, Andrew, and right, Justin.
You're the right winger?
This guy.
Andrew, is that surprising to you, Mr. Fox Business?
But the fact that no one is willing to...
I don't believe in that spectrum, Jen. I'm on a spectrum, but not that spectrum.
Yeah, no, he's non-binary.
Justin, our right winger. Wow.
Yeah, that's what the R stands for. But the fact that no one is willing to regularly call Justin out on his blatant hypocrisy makes me want to drop this show like I dropped politics.
Oh, maybe you can go eat some fucking poutine with that other guy.
Have you people not figured out that Justin is a troll? Like,
he's
there's
just
a
a
difference.
shitster.
Yeah, he doesn't believe half the shit he says. So that's why we're not bothering to call him out, because he's just a distraction.
Well, no, I mean, here's the reality of it. Number one, I don't remember saying any of these things.
I don't either.
The one thing that I will say from my perspective that it is my job to do on this show, especially when there is a lot of agreement, and especially when it comes to Trump stuff, there is a lot of agreement between Jen and Heaton, is to just not, I want to try to get in the way of what people would write good faith emails about. And so I try to take what I would see as counter questions to those arguments, to the arguments that you guys are making, and I will make them. So at the very least, other people of varying different political spectrums are able to say, well, at least there was a conversation that involved my viewpoint. That is my goal. And I do that for the left or the right, depending on where I know stuff. But in general, like, if everybody's agreeing about Trump, then yeah, I'm going to wind up playing devil's advocate for Trump, because that's the way it goes. And also, to be totally honest with you, I listen to a lot of shows where everybody just nods in agreement and talks about how evil Trump is. And there's a place for that. I just think it's a really saturated market. And I think that both of my co-hosts are smart enough and they're informed enough that we can go to a second level on it beyond just smiling and nodding and saying all this shit we agree on, because that's not interesting.
I think
podcasting,
it's good to sail the ship towards cognitive dissonance. I think it's when like in my Justin, I can tell you do this with me a lot, where you're like, man, Heaton fucking hates Donald Trump and like has made multiple career decisions in opposition to Donald Trump.
Yes.
And now Donald Trump's doing this super libertarian thing that Heaton's been talking about for 4 years. Heaton, how do you feel about that? And I have to I have to sort that out in front of all of you. I have to tap dance for that. But I
is
think
called
that's actually
good fucking content.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yes.
Okay. I totally believe that you believe what you're saying.
Yeah.
But then why do you do it via text? Why do you do it when we're hanging out outside the show? Like, why do you do it you did it to me yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because what was it? Like Donald Trump said something about building trains and you're like,
yeah.
Jen's going to be MAGA now. Like, you just do this.
Oh,
you are a shit stirrer.
I mean, I'm not saying that
And
I'm
we
not
love
naturally
you.
talented at it. Like, yeah, no. What? All right. So no, that was more, I didn't read that as a Jen's going to be MAGA. That was more of a joke that like Donald Trump was talking about investigating the fucking boondoggle train that has been like in the works in California for probably as long as we've both been alive, that they've been trying to build a high-speed rail between LA and San Francisco. And I was like, if Donald Trump gets to the bottom of and helps facilitate the high-speed rail from LA to San Francisco, then Jen's gonna put on the red hat. Jen will be make America train again. MATA, the MATA movement.
Which honestly, like if he does things that make the world better, like why wouldn't I cheer that on? So yes, you're not wrong about that.
I also
and
did
I get
that, but
why
to
you
be
said
fair,
it.
I also put in the group chat when Jimmy Carter was like, do not, if you put me on a train from DC to Georgia, I'll haunt you forever. I also put that in the chat and said, Jimmy Carter hated trains. I now love Jimmy Carter. So yes, I am on and off the clock a shit stirrer. But in terms of this podcast, like that's the point that that's why I do
if
it.
Andrew and I were to call all these things out, it would just be feeding the troll. So sometimes I just don't feed the troll. I ignore him and move on, and it's for the best of the show.
I don't know, maybe write in whether or not it's good content or I'm just a bad person, that whenever Jen gets exasperated and just says like, oh my God, like that's, I feel like that's funny. Like that's a good, people like that.
It's fine.
It shows like a sibling relationship that we have.
Oh, which we
that's
absolutely have. And I love, do not change that because someone fucking emailed.
Oh, trust me. I'm too far gone.
Just like our government, right?
Yeah. So I'm leaning in.
Yeah, there you go.
The Laken-Riley Act doesn't create the authority Jen thinks it does, right? I'm an indigent defense attorney in Harris County, Texas. Our jails are chock-a-block with defendants on ICE holds and have been for years. If an illegal immigrant gets arrested and it gets reported to ICE, the feds put a detainer on them. This forces the jail to hold them, even if they make bond on their charge. This is a practical guarantee that they will get deported, sometimes before their case is even resolved. It has been this way for years. The change that the Laken-Riley Act made, as I understand it, is that it forces the local lawman to make that report. A lot of counties weren't reporting illegal defendants for a lot of reasons, including the expense of holding them. But this authority that Jen thinks is new describes a lot of clients that I had under the Biden administration too. It is not new.
This is not relevant to the Laken-Riley Act. I think you sent us in some interesting information, so thank you. But the Laken-Riley Act does two things. One is it allows people to be deported after they are accused. Like this is the part that we're concerned about. They are accused or arrested for shoplifting. Like that was the main one. Theft and shoplifting are now things that you don't even have to be convicted for, but you can now get rounded up if someone accuses you of it, you get arrested for it, then you can be deported for that. So it's like that is what's new. It has nothing to do with reporting. And then the second half of it is allows the states to essentially sue the federal government for allowing an illegal immigrant, or like I said, this isn't just about illegals. We should stop using that phrase. But if an immigrant,
we're back in the 90s.
Well, I mean, this is where we're at. Yeah. If an immigrant is released and then does something, the states can now sue the federal government for not deporting that person. So those are the two changes. I honestly don't know what you're talking about with, it forces the local lawman to make the report. The Laken-Riley Act, if you're curious about it, is 4 pages long. Like, go read it. It's not.
I don't have time for 4 pages.
It's not a tough one. But like the main change that that it makes is it allows people to be merely arrested for a low-level crime like theft, and it says specifically shoplifting.
Yeah.
That's the biggest change in here. So I honestly don't know what this emailer is getting at, but like
I think, and again, they are an indigent attorney, an indigent defense attorney. So they are being retained by people who would be in this situation for which the law would apply to. What I think they're saying is that these now it is compulsive for the lower levels of government to report them, and that they often were not doing that because they knew that if they reported it. So let's say the shoplift, right? It doesn't matter whether or not they shoplifted. It matters that they're not allowed to be in America legally. So whether or not you jaywalked or you did something, whatever, you're now on the radar. You are now in the grasp of American law enforcement, and that some people were not reporting that because oftentimes it takes a long time to deport somebody, or you don't deport somebody, and it would be on the body that reports it to hold them. And if they have limited capacity, they don't want to do it. And so that was leading to whatever.
And I could see that being affected, but that's not a part of the law. The law doesn't say that you have to make those reports, but maybe your state is telling you that we want you to make these reports because there's been a change between the feds and the states. Like, fine. Like there's going to be downstream effects of a law like this, but I'm just letting you know, like if you're like the new authority of Lake and Riley is what it is. And one of the effects is likely to be people who are not here illegally, people who claimed asylum, which is their right, but don't have the documents. They are going to get wrapped up in that. So that's why that entire conversation was happening. This is interesting information, but I just don't think it's relevant to what I was saying.
But don't have the documents? What does that mean?
Yeah. So if you come here and you're claiming asylum while you're waiting for your court date, you don't have a visa, you don't have a green card, you don't have the documents. And that's what makes you subject to these rounding up and deporting of the people. So they're not here illegally, but they are undocumented, which means they are subject to these deportations. This is something the ACLU is really concerned about. So that's why I just don't like throwing around the term like illegal immigrant, because this is targeting immigrants that don't have their paperwork yet. And for asylum seekers, which is a very large number of the people that have come over the border, they fall into this category. They're here waiting for this court case to see if they're going to get those documents. But in the meantime, they're here. And so now you can have someone arrested for shoplifting, whether they did it or not, and they can be shipped out of the country. That's what Lake and Riley does. That's the concern with Lake and Riley.
All right. The lively Baldoni feud brings us on home. Intimacy coordinator writes, I wanted to share some thoughts on Jen's comments about adding extra kisses to love scenes. While I understand her perspective that it might seem harmless, I don't think that it fully acknowledges the structured nature of these scenes. Much like a fight or stunt choreography, intimacy scenes are carefully planned, agreed upon, and rehearsed. Actors can't simply improvise additional movements, just as a stunt performer wouldn't throw in extra kicks, or pyrotechnics crew wouldn't add unplanned explosions. Ignoring these boundaries disregards the consent and agreements made beforehand, which is exactly why intimacy coordinators exist, to ensure that these scenes are treated with the same level of professionalism and respect as stunts or action sequences. It's not just about comfort, it's about maintaining ethical and professional standards. While Jen may personally feel a few extra kisses are not a big deal, many actors don't share that view, and the issue isn't gendered. Both male and female actors have taken advantage of these situations.
I mean, that's very interesting. Fair point. I don't think that I said that it's harmless. I think you have to put my comments in the context in which I made them, which is about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. This is a battle that they are having in public perceptions.
Yeah.
And so where the claims that she is making are not, he said I had to blow him or else I wouldn't be in the film, where it's like he kissed me an extra time. If the judge and jury is going to be the court of public opinion, I'm not sure this one is going to rise to the standards that she's hoping that it is, especially when we now have this information about how she kind of took over the movie and made her own cuts and like she did some kind of crazy shit. So it's like there's a back and forth going here. And if she was uncomfortable, it seems like she got the intimacy coordinator. But the whole point that I was trying to make is that this is a battle of public opinion, and I just don't think this is the Me Too revelation that maybe she thinks
that puts me more on her side. If she took over the movie and he was mad about it and then he decided to ruin her reputation.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, Because that happens all the time. Like big stars take over movies and rewrite their own scenes and do
Which
their
is
own
why
cuts.
this is so
Like,
fascinating, right?
yeah.
Because she's the big star. She's the power player here, not him. So it's just like, how much is this a Me Too issue? And how much is this like two people who wanted to control a movie? One guy got his movie taken over.
Yeah, and he's butthurt about it.
He's butthurt, but then she's butthurt because things were said about her on social media. Like it's all a lot of butthurts. And when it comes to like, I was just saying, like, I just don't think that this is, I don't think that it's leading the public to be like, well, you know, Justin Baldoni is a Me Too abuser, you know, like, I just don't know that it's rising to that. And it's not because I think that it's harmless or that actors that experience that it doesn't suck like them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about this particular case. It's messy.
I was recently making a film with my good friend Jake Tapper, and I'm glad we had an intimacy coordinator on hand because one of us likes to improvise stuff, including crying, and that just it needs to be talked about in advance. And my overall point here, though, is that the intimacy coordinator was in a union, and her hours were fucked up. Like, can we just? We should work outside of that union.
If you like running bits about sex, boy, are you going to want to be on the Patreon episode.
I think I'm going to have to go in a different direction.
Oh, are you?
It'll be great. It'll be great. I don't think I should leave with this.
See if Heaton can stay off the I was in a sex club with ... running joke during the Patreon episode.
I'm gonna try.
Will he have the discipline to stay away from the joke? We will all find out.
Damn it. I should have said Dame Judi Dench instead of Debbie. Fuck. That would have been a good callback. I apologize, listeners. I'm not on my game
You've already
today.
done Dame Judi
Right, but it would have been a
Dench.
callback on the Eiffel Tower thing with Jake Tapper. See?
We'll fix it in post. We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg on PX3 this week. Two great conversations. Number one, Chris Cillizza, formerly of CNN, he went viral for apologizing on two things. He said that during his independent and CNN career, he got coverage of Biden's age wrong by saying it wasn't a big deal when it obviously was. And B, he got the origins of COVID wrong by trusting Fauci over Donald Trump because he assumed Fauci was a better person to decide on that. And now he feels otherwise. And so I had him on the show and I asked him the following question. If you now know what you know, and I could magically drop you back into your body 2.5 years ago on the set of CNN, live television, what would you say? And do you think it would have affected your career? He answers that question on PX3 this week. Jen?
So, as I think most of us know, there was a plane crash last week that happened in Washington, D.C. And I had already had on my phone, I'm listening to a lot of Evergreen hearings because my assistant is about to have a baby any second now. So we're trying to like get ahead of things. I had already listened to it.
Nothing. I'm sorry. Please continue.
You silly bastard. I had already listened to this hearing about air traffic control. And so I decided to make that episode as fast as I could. And I got it out for you because, you know, even though air traffic control, it's appearing now that wasn't really the reason that this crash happened. We don't know yet, so I'm just not going to get into the details of what I know. But
there's a lot going on there.
There's a lot. But like one thing that I can tell you is that we have a lot of problems with air traffic control that go beyond the staffing. Like last week, there was a lot of people talking about the staffing at air traffic control, and that is real. But there's also very real infrastructure issues. There's technician issues. There's a lot. And so this hearing was just back in December. And so I took out, the most interesting clips from that hearing. And that is the episode that is now waiting for you on Congressional.
Nutritious content. Mr. Heaton.
I'm going to do the trade war stuff. I don't care. I'm still doing it. There's stuff going on with China and I want to talk about it. So yeah.
There you go.
There we go. Just that simple. Heaton on trade wars.
Yeah.
He's a big fan of trade wars.
He loves them.
I'm a big fan of trade. Thank you,
tariffs,
Jen. Yes.
and
big
trade
fan
wars.
of trade wars, tariffs. I have a big frame picture of McKinley that me and Tapper make eye contact with sometimes.
No, Jesus.
Yeah, so that's a preview of what you'll hear in the Political Orphanage.
Yeah.
All the
It's
reasons
funny. I'll
that
say
tariffs
this.
are wise.
It's a funny episode. Here's what I want to do is I've previously done an episode with Big Jim, James Thatcher, on what can the president do. We did that right after the election of like, does the president have unilateral authority to raise tariffs? So that was a very helpful episode. This is a good corollary to that because we're going to do two things. One, I'm going to talk to Jim on what is actually happening right now. Like what has happened? There have been things that have happened. It wasn't just the weird jerk thing with Mexico and Canada. There is stuff actively going on with China.
Yep.
Also, like Jim talking to all of his contacts is like nobody in logistics and international trade thinks that this is a temporary negotiation tactic. They think that we're gearing up for a trade Cold War and that this is the opening gambit. And I want to just kind of get into like, hey, like, let's talk about why Trump thinks tariffs are good and why I think tariffs are bad. So if you think this kind of shit's going to happen a lot over the next 4 years, I'm going to give you a primer on the two sides of why this is good or bad. So you'll understand what the argument is moving forward.
I think it's good. That is very, very good. Not the tariffs, your episode.
Thank you.
Well, for Jen Briney and Andrew Heaton, I'm Justin Robert Young saying, we're not wrong. These emailers are. Especially the Canada one.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I said nice things about him. I was nice to him on the way out. He was very heated. So
Clearly.
if you're listening to this, sorry.
I'm not.